And joining me now is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson of Louisiana. Speaker Johnson, thanks so much for joining us. Republican senators have made it clear that they want to make some changes to the House bill. Senate Majority Leader John Thune told CNN the Senate's going to write its own bill. Even though they have a larger majority than you do, what is your message to your colleagues in the Senate?
Thanks, Jake. Great to be with you. Look, I've been very consistent with our colleagues in the Senate. We worked hand in glove with them all through this process, remembering that the House began this more than a year ago. It was March of last year when we got our committee chairs together and told them to begin to prepare for this massive reconciliation package. We believed at that time, more than a year ago, that we would win the White House, the Senate, and the House and have unified government and have this really once-in-a-generation opportunity to do so much in one piece of legislation. So I met with the Senate Republicans, all my colleagues over there, last week on Tuesday at their weekly luncheon, and I encouraged them, to do their work, of course, as we all anticipate, but to make as few modifications to this package as possible, because remembering that we've got to pass it one more time to ratify their changes in the House, and I have a very delicate balance here, a very delicate equilibrium that we've reached over a long period of time, and it's best not to meddle with it too much.
Let's talk about what the legislation actually does. I want to play something that you said back in January about the national debt.
The number one threat to our nation right now is our debt. We take that very seriously. Congress has kicked the can down the road for decades, and we're out of road. And so we understand that it's our responsibility to fix this.
So there are 5 different independent scores of this legislation. Every one of them says that it will increase the deficit somewhere between $3.3 and $4 trillion over the next 10 years. Now, I get you take issue with the Congressional Budget Office and that they don't have dynamic scoring, all this. But this is the emerging consensus among everyone analyzing. They say you're kicking, not only are you kicking the can down the road, but you're making the problem worse. You're adding to the debt.
Well, I think that is dramatically overstated, and here's why. Those same groups can objectively see and acknowledge that this is the largest cut in spending in at least 30 years and arguably of all time. We're cutting over $1.5 trillion in federal spending while we check all the boxes and bring about a pro-growth economy. And the CBO has been panned because, as you said, they don't do dynamic scoring. What that means is they don't account for the growth that will be fostered by all the policies that are in this big piece of legislation. This is not theoretical, Jake. Just remember the last Trump administration. After the first 2 years, we brought about the greatest economy in the history of the world, not just the U.S. The growth was off the charts. It was an average of about 3% of growth in GDP. Why? Because we cut taxes and we cut regulations. We're doing the same thing this time around, but on steroids. This is a much larger package, a much more robust package with all these features that will really get the economy going, because wages will rise, job creators, entrepreneurs, risk takers will have more ability to expand their businesses. U.S. manufacturing onshore is being incentivized. All these things will work together to make the economy grow faster than many of these projections are putting forth. So we're not buying it. We'll see what happens, and we have the evidence to prove it from the past.
So the CBO doesn't get a vote, but my next guest, Republican Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, does. And he wrote in the Wall Street Journal, quote, "The one big, beautiful bill will almost certainly add to our deficits and debt." And he even called the bill the Titanic. What do you say to him?
Look, I love Ron Johnson. He's a dear friend, and he and I agree on our philosophy. We're limited government conservatives. We want to limit the size and scope of the government and make it work more efficiently and effectively. My response to him, and we've spoken about this over recent months, is that we're doing the best we can with the vote numbers that we have. In other words, we've got to turn this aircraft carrier. You don't turn an aircraft carrier on a dime. It takes a mile of open ocean to do it. And it took us decades to get in this financial situation. We can't just flip a switch and get out of it overnight. One of the people that my friend Ron Johnson really respects is Russ Vought, who directs the Office of Management and Budget. And Russ is a big champion for this piece of legislation. He calls it historic. And he's a fiscal hawk, and so am I. So we're doing as much as we can. And I just encourage Ron to remember, in the House, we have 220 Republicans, a wide range of perspectives and a wide range of districts represented. And I've got to get to 217 votes to get this thing over the line. So as much as we can in as big an increment as we can, I think we've achieved that here, and I just want them to remember that. We got to deal within the realm of what's possible.
So in addition to people like Senator Johnson who think this bill doesn't do enough to cut spending, you're going to have to convince people like Susan Collins of Maine and Josh Hawley of Missouri who are worried about cuts that this bill proposes. President Trump repeatedly insisted he would not touch Medicaid and that Americans would not lose their insurance. Here's what he said just 5 days ago.
We're not changing Medicaid, and we're not changing Medicare, and we're not changing Social Security.
Can you guarantee that your voters who supported the election, particularly working class voters, will not lose health insurance under this bill?
Oh, they won't lose health insurance.
The CBO found that nearly 8 million Americans will in fact lose their insurance coverage because of the changes this bill makes to Medicaid. So how do you reconcile that with what President Trump said?
It's directly in line with what the president said. I've said the same. We are not cutting Medicaid in this package. There's a lot of misinformation out there about this, Jake. The numbers of Americans who are affected are those that are entwined in our work to eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse. And what do I mean by that? You got more than 1.4 million illegal aliens on Medicaid. Medicaid is not intended for non-U.S. citizens. It's intended for the most vulnerable populations of Americans, which is pregnant women and young single mothers, the disabled, the elderly. They are protected in what we're doing because we're preserving the resources for those who need it most. You're talking about 4.8 million able-bodied workers, young men, for example, who are on Medicaid and not working. They are choosing not to work when they can. That is called fraud. They are cheating the system. When you root out those kinds of abuses, you save the resources that are so desperately needed by the people who deserve it and need it most. That's what we're doing, and that's why this is the morality of what we're doing here is precisely right, and it comports with all the public opinion polls. When people ask whether young men, for example, who are able-bodied and have no dependents should be working, everybody says yes, and that's what our package does. So these estimates that you're hearing are accurate, but it's dealing with those numbers of people in the population, and that's going to make preserve the program and strengthen it for those who need it most.
So 1.4 million people in your home state of Louisiana are on Medicaid. More than 800,000 receive SNAP benefits, also known as food stamps. Is it your contention that if any of those Louisianans lose their benefits, it's because they shouldn't have been receiving them because they were committing waste, fraud, or abuse?
Yeah, look, my district, as every district in America, has people who are on the program who shouldn't. And when you're talking about, I keep using this example, a young able-bodied man with no dependents, there's no reason he should not be working. We are the party that supports human dignity, and we find purpose and dignity in our work. It's good for the individuals involved. It's good for their community. It's good for society at large. When you're talking about work requirements, by the way, it's very flexible. It just means that you either work or you volunteer, do something meaningful in your community, or you're in a job or work training program. 20 hours a week. I mean, this is not some huge demand. If you're going to be on the public wagon, you have to do something to help pull it if you're able. And again, Jake, the purpose of this is to preserve these very necessary, very important safety net programs for the people who actually need and deserve them, and not those who are gaming the system. And I think I'll go into any town hall anywhere in America, my district or otherwise, and explain this, and everyone nods in agreement and understands it. So the Democrats are trying to twist the facts. They're trying to put out misinformation because they're going to vote against this, and there's no way to defend it. What it means is they're going to be voting for more fraud, waste, and abuse instead of the elimination of it, which is what our package does.
It's not just Democrats, though, right? I mean, there are voices in MAGA world sounding the alarm that cuts to Medicaid could really impact Trump's own supporters. Take a listen.
Medicaid, you got to be careful because a lot of MAGA's on Medicaid. I'm telling you, if you don't think so, you are dead wrong. Just can't take a Medex to it, although I would love to.
This is real Medicaid benefit cuts. I can't support that. No Republican should support that. We're the party of the working class, Mono. We need to act like it.
That was Steve Bannon and Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri. What is your response to them?
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with that. Of course, there's lots of people on Medicaid in our party, and and others. But again, if they look at the final package and the details of what has come through the House, I think we reached the right point. And Jake, it also brings up the very important point that we're trying to do this on a very aggressive timetable. The reason I tried to get this done, and we did get it done before Memorial Day and send it to the Senate, is so the president can be signing this into law by Independence Day on July 4th. Why is that so important? Because we've got to get relief to the American people, and then we also need to, for political purposes, give a lot of time, enough time for everyone to see that this package actually is what we say. It's going to help the country. It's going to help the economy. It's going to help all boats to rise, just as we did after the first 2 years of the first Trump administration. And so we're anxious to get this signed into law so people feel it and see it before that midterm election, and they understand it is the Republicans who are doing the best for hardworking Americans, low-income families, and everyone who deserves a better shot.
I want to ask you about something else. President Trump held a closed-door event Thursday night for top investors in his private cryptocurrency. We do not know who was there. The list has not been released. We do not know how much of the money came from outside the country. The president has, of course, a huge role to play when it comes to regulating crypto. I really have a difficult time imagining that if this was a Democratic president doing the exact same thing, you wouldn't be outraged.
Well, look, I don't know anything about the dinner. I was a little busy this past week, as you know, getting the reconciliation package over the line. And so I'm not going to comment on something I haven't even heard about. I'm not sure who was there or what the purpose was. But I'll say this. President Trump is very active. He's very engaged. He's the greatest deal maker, one of the greatest deal makers of all time. He is working on these trade imbalances that we've had and having tremendous success. We've got over 75 countries now renegotiating their trade agreements with America. It's going to make it better for all of us, everybody in the country. And he is encouraging new technologies, crypto, and the advancement of AI. He's appointed a czar for the first time. We have an AI czar in David Sachs, who's an expert in the industry from Silicon Valley. There's a lot of exciting things happening. The president is trying to encourage that along as much as he can, and I think the vast majority of the country is applauding those efforts. So I'm one of them. I think that the result of all this is going to be extraordinary for everybody in the country.
You oversaw, as Speaker, a congressional investigation into President Biden's ties to his son Hunter's questionable business dealings to enrich him. You seem to think it was your responsibility to look into this sort of thing then.
Yeah, Jake, the big important distinction, the Biden crime family, as they were named, earned that title. Why? Because they used shell companies, fake LLCs, series of what appeared to be money laundering operations, and Hunter Biden, of course, with his difficult past and the corruption in his past, the family on the public dole, or on the president's dole. The president lied about his involvement in the business dealings, all of that. The evidence just piled up. And by the way, at the same time, the evidence of his diminished mental capacity, subject to your book, of course, I wish it had been published a year earlier, because everybody saw it. Everybody saw what was happening. He used the auto pen. And by the way, there's investigations right now going on in the House. Jamie Comer and the Oversight Committee will be investigating the use of the auto pen, when the president's mental capacity declined, and whether all those things are even legally valid now, given the obvious fact that he was not the one making the decisions. It's huge implications from all this, and so I think the American people had reason to doubt, and we had great reason and I think a responsibility to investigate those things. The difference, of course, is that President Trump does everything out in the open. He's not trying to hide anything. There's no shell companies or fake LLCs or fake family businesses. He's putting it out there so everybody can evaluate for themselves.
On the book, I wish the more than 200 people that talked to me and Alex Thompson, my co-author, after Election Day, I sure wish that they had talked to us a year ago. I agree with you on that. But on this matter with the crypto, shouldn't we at least just know who was at the dinner? Wouldn't you want to know that list of people?
I guess. I mean, again, I don't know anything about that dinner. Okay. I do know that President Trump is the most transparent president in the most transparent administration probably in history. He has nothing to hide, and he's out there trying to advance America's interests. That's what America First policies are all about, and that's what our big reconciliation bill will deliver for the people. We're really proud of the product.
Mr. Speaker, I know you have a lot of military veterans and Gold Star families in your congressional district. I know your son is at Annapolis. I wish you a meaningful and peaceful Memorial Day weekend. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Same to you, my friend. God bless.